Hey y'all, welcome back. We are going to get back to doing some chassis fab work. Here we have the populated main preamp board, and I'll do a very quick TLDR review of what we did on this board. We're using some MyFlex 0.15 UF caps for the first cap in the input stage. I feel that's probably the most critical place, and I've been wanting to try some of these MyFlex caps. We put the small Mundorfs here, then the larger 1 UF Mundorfs here. These are the aluminum oil caps. And here's a couple of Nikon audio grade caps that are also on the underside of the board. And then this is the top side of the board. It's got the fat traces on it, which makes it easier to identify. You want to make sure you put the tube sockets in from this direction. We've used all Vichy caps. For the ones in the signal path, we used 1% resistors. We used 1% of these PF size RIAA network mica caps. Tried to use really high quality components throughout. These are some Nikon just regular, caps for the power supply or the power decoupling capacitors that are used with these networks like an RC network to decouple each stage from the previous one. So, quick rundown of what we did on this board. It's going to sit like this on these. We're going to have these standoffs that are going to mount it below the top surface of this board on these standoffs. So we're done with that for now. Now we want to locate this power supply board. And one of the couple of things we need to watch out for is we have this little choke that's got to be mounted on this back plane, so we want to leave room for it. And then we also got to have this power plug. And that's about as close as I feel safe getting the board to this power plug, which ends up being, I think it's 1 3/4. Yeah, it's 1 3/4 inches. So the other piece of this puzzle, we have this power transformer, which is a 269AX Hammond, and it's got to get mounted here in this back corner. And I don't like hanging them off the back edge of the chassis, so it's going to sit about right there. And we want to make sure that we don't want to put this over here where we can't install this screw. So you want to make sure that you move the transformer. Let's see if I can move these wires. You want to make sure you mount the transformer about like this, so you got room for this screw and still have room for this transformer. I think what's going to end up happening is these two back screws on this board are going to be in line with these two transformer screws. So obviously this board's going to be mounted underneath on some more of these standoffs, but these screws are going to be visible from the top. So it'll look nice having them in line with these transformer screws. And I have checked. The only thing that possibly could interfere with this nut that's holding this transformer down is this capacitor, and it's going to be one of these low profile ones like this. So we're going to have plenty of room. Not going to have any issue. So the other nice thing, and it's been kind of the goal of this rebuild of my preamp, is I want to have a lot of space between the power supply and the actual preamp board, so I can put some bulkheads. I'm probably going to put 2 of them in here between the power supply and this, so it would act basically like having the power supply in a separate chassis. That would be, it's going to turn out being 3.5 inches apart, which should be enough to keep it quiet and not have any of the EMI from this board get picked up by this board. Because in the other one, the last one I built, they were right up against each other. So we've separated them 3.5 inches, which I'm hoping should be enough to make this thing silent. So, first thing you want to make sure when you're doing this, I think I pointed this out earlier, you want to stack up. These are just some scrap 1x4s underneath here so we don't dent this aluminum. It's super easy to dent. And then we're going to first drill the holes laying out this board. And so we want to go 1 3/4 inches. And you can just kind of eyeball, well, let's go ahead and just go like this and get this as centered as we can. That looks good right there. Then we get our little automatic center punch. And we punch 2 holes. And just like on the other side, we're going to drill our holes at one end of the board, and then use a couple of screws to locate it while we punch the other 2 holes. And just go start off slow so you know sure it's not walking. Whoop, and there it walked. So that being the case, I'm going to double punch these. Actually triple punch it. And then put the board back up here. Make sure. Yep, those look good. These drills like to walk. There we go. And then this one. And we're first drilling a pilot hole. Let me look at what size drill that is. That's a 5/32 or 5/64 bit we're using to drill the pilot hole. Because it's a lot easier to deal with if a pilot drill walks a little bit than the main one that you're drilling the hole with. And this is a 1/8 inch we're using for the mounting holes. And there's those 2 holes. And we grab a couple of screws and put the board down. Okay, so then it's got this one up here. It's a little further forward. I'm going to go ahead and double punch these since that first one walked. And this one's just up a little bit. They're a little asymmetrical, the holes. And then we'll have all the mounting holes for the power board drilled. Then next will be drilling the holes for the transformer. When you're first starting the drill, don't put a lot of downward pressure on it, because that's part of what makes them walk. And then once you get it, feel it get started, then you can go ahead and push in. But with these really small bits, you don't want to put too much downward pressure on it, because it's easy to break them. Get the chuck a little tighter. And let's wipe the chips away. And I said in an earlier video, if you're going to be trying to like polish this or leave it bare aluminum, you need to be extra careful about scratching through this coating, protective film they put on it. Here we go. All 4 holes line up perfect. Okay. If you're going to paint it like I'm going to be doing this one, I want to paint this kind of a crinkle black so that it matches my other amplifiers, then you don't have to be quite as careful because you can sand out any holes or any scratches that you end up putting in it. So here, I line up the back, there's the bell of the back of this transformer with the back of the chassis, and let me put this wood up under here a little better, down here at this end. And you just want to make sure you got it far enough away where you can mount these screws, but it's still mostly over kind of in this corner. And then this is kind of a slot. I try to punch the hole in the center of the slot as much as possible. And on this, I'm going to go ahead and mark all 4 holes, because this does have a little bit of adjustment. The other thing is, the hole is going to be underneath these little legs, and so if you had to file the hole out a little bit, you know, elongate the hole a little bit to get the screw to go in, you won't see it. And then before you punch the last one, just make sure each punch mark is pretty centered in the slot. And then come back and look, because now it's easy to move it a little bit if you need to. And the one in this back corner needs to go over just a breath. Like that. And then we're going to again start. And just put a little, you know, where it's got like a little cone into the metal. And stop. Because again, now's the point where it's still possible to fix anything we've got going wrong. And set the transformer back up and just see if they are all centered in these slots or centered in these holes where the bolts will go through. And that looks perfect. So we're going to drill these holes. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you like I showed you in an earlier video, I take my 1/2-inch bit and I put some tape on here so these flutes don't tear up my skin. And then I just go over these holes like that by hand. And go around each one of them and deburr the edges of the hole. We don't need to do those. Those aren't the final holes yet. Just like that. Let's go ahead and do these down here. This metal's so thin and this aluminum's so soft. If you try to do this with the drill and the bit in the drill, it would be real easy to mess up and end up actually drilling through a giant hole or otherwise screwing it up. And if you do this by hand, there's no possibility of doing something like that and ruining the work we've done so far. And then do these 4 holes. And then probably going to jump ahead in the video while I go find the bolts that I'm going to be using for this transformer so we can drill the right size hole. So I think they're number 8 screws. And again, if you're building this if you're in Europe or somewhere where metric's more common, or you want to use metric screws, that's fine too. The standoffs that I got were in American size, and so I didn't want to mess around and try to find some metric standoffs, but in your country it might be easier to find metric ones. Okay, I found a couple of the number 8 screws we're going to be using. I don't have 4 of them, so I'll have to make a little trip to the hardware store, but they just fit through that hole and give a really secure mounting for this transformer. The other thing that I'm going to do when I make the trip to the hardware store, I really hate the look of these silver Phillips head screws they use to hold these transformer bells onto the core. And so I'm going to get some black screws and black nuts, and then I'm going to get a little black paint and paint the edge of this fiber washer black. I just think it looks a whole lot better than having that screw. The other thing too I do is I peel this sticker off and then put it on the inside of the chassis somewhere so that later if somebody's wondering what transformer this is, they can find it, but I don't have to leave that, ugly sticker on the top of the transformer. So just another little trick. So we need to find the bit for those screws, and they are something around 200 thousandths will be perfect. So let's see what size bit that comes out to be. It's probably going to be this 7/32. It's probably going to be, yep, it's just a little over 200 thousandths. So now when you're drilling this, make sure that you're drilling out the holes for the transformer and you don't make a mistake and drill this one out here that's for the chassis hold down screw. So we're going to drill these out. And then, now we can come back with this big bit and deburr these holes. The only other hole that we're going to have to put on the top is for the power switch. And I'm going to use this little guy here, which is just a little miniature toggle switch. You can use, obviously you can use whatever you want to use. That's just what I happened to pick to put on here. Little chrome switch. And then deburr these holes. And like I was saying earlier, that Like when we were punching the holes for the tubes and doing that main board, the position of all of that stuff was pretty critical, but the rest of this stuff is just really not that critical. But I think the switch would look good being, opposite right here, like centered on the transformer, somewhere in that area right there. And then we can use the tail of this to get how long this is. Okay, that's 3 inches. So if we go 1.5 inches in, that will be halfway between this edge and the transformer. Yep. So we'll just make a mark there. And then we can measure. Again, doesn't have to be exact, but just like right there. That looks like a great spot for the little switch. And we'll start with drill a little pilot hole. Okay, then we need to find out what size bit we want to use that matches the shaft of this, just big enough for the shaft to go through. And this looks like just under 250 thousandths. So we go back to our little drill kit. I'm betting. Actually, this might be a little small, but we're going to try this. Was it 15/64? So we can always go up a drill bit size if the switch just doesn't go through. Okay, let's see if the switch fits. Just not big enough. So we're going to go up to our 1/4 inch drill. It's better to drill it too small because you can always come back with the next size up drill bit and just go like that. And I'm sure that's going to clear. So we'll go ahead and deburr that hole and deburr the hole on the inside. And fits right through. Okay, here's I wouldn't say a really tricky part, but it's a part I think a lot of people ignore. These switches usually come with a locking tab washer. And what I mean by that is there's a small little tab on the outer edge of this washer that sticks up that is supposed to go into a hole that keeps the switch from rotating. And then if you look at the switch, there'll be a little groove in it that this washer fits into so it can't turn. And we want the switch to flip on like forward and back. So we want this little locking tab washer hole. I'm going to put it in the back. So all you really need to do is put it over the hole and then get a little screwdriver and mark the back edge of it. You can see the edge of it's going to be a pretty good bit of ways from that hole. Then you find a drill bit, which luckily the one, what is this one? the 1/8 inch drill bit is the right size for this little hole. So we get our wood under here and come just inboard from that mark and make a center punch mark. Then get your 1/8 inch drill bit. Slip it a little bit. And drill a little hole there. And we're going to deburr that hole. And I put it on the back side in case you miss just a little bit. You're not going to see it once you got the switch in place. And then to check it, I'll put the washer on the switch with the tab facing up and then stick it through the hole, and yep, little tab goes right into the little hole, and that'll keep the switch won't be able to ever rotate once you get it all tightened up. So we got the switch hole done. Now we need to, this is probably one of the hardest parts of the metal fabrication, is mounting the power socket. And I've decided I want to put the power socket on this side opposite the transformer over here near the switch. And for my use, I want the switch mounted up fairly high on this part here on the back plane. And so I want it somewhere like that. Kind of up here close, fairly close to this top edge, and over here to this side, but not so far in this corner where it's going to be hard to get in here and put a nut on the back side of this. So that's a pretty good spot right there. So I'm going to mark